At Five Star Bank, community is at the heart of what we do. Every day we strive to have thoughtful solutions for our customers and help our communities prosper. Honest dialogue about the issues affecting the region is vitally important to that prosperity. We are proud to be part of the conversation and hope you'll join in.
Few things can wound a child more than being bullied. The scars that children carry from being ostracized or ridiculed can last a lifetime. Children with disabilities can suffer even more greatly because of their inability to blend into the crowd or to defend themselves. For parents hoping that the classroom will be a safe place, the hurt can be equally devastating. A local nonprofit called A Touch of Understanding uses education and experience in the classroom to teach our children to be a bit kinder and more understanding to those who seem different, but are just like the rest of us in all the ways that count. Joining us are the founder of A Touch of Understanding, Leslie DeDora, and board member and volunteer Darlene O'Brien. Leslie, what is bullying?
I think bullying is taking advantage of someone else in any way, and it can be children doing it or adults doing it. When someone is at a disadvantage and isn't able to protect themselves or defend themselves in any way, I think that would be a definition of bullying.
Darlene, when bullying takes place, it's a problem for whoever is suffering from that. Tell us about the unique experience of disabled children experiencing bullying.
Bullying, to begin with, is a devastating process, as you said a moment ago in the introduction. It leaves scars far past what we see on the surface, and it lasts for years and years. Kids with disabilities who are in school, they experience a level of isolation from the start because they already know that they're different. If you start the first day of school, every child is looking around, wondering, is anybody looking at me? Is anybody going to pay attention to me? Are they going to make fun of me? It's a human condition. But if you come into a classroom and you have blindness or deafness or cerebral palsy, or you're using a wheelchair or leg braces, or you have autism or any other kind of disability, you automatically are, just by definition, you're already separate from the rest of the kids. Sure. Because you look different, or you sound different, or you behave differently. When you add that to the regular, everyday tension that can be in a classroom or on a playground, it tends to draw the kids apart on a day-to-day basis. Right. In the classroom, the teacher is going to teach all the kids as best as he or she can on an equal basis. But the social aspect that comes in, that's a whole other story. It's just not addressed.
Leslie, I want to ask you about that. Are children just cruel?
Oh, I don't think children are cruel at all. I think actually children are kind and very, very wise. But if they don't have the information, they can behave out of fear. And fear makes all of us defend ourselves. And if they're afraid of a child who looks different...
Why would they be afraid of a child that looks different?
That's interesting. We were actually called to a school because there was a 6th grade boy with autism. And he spent all his recesses spinning around. It's called stimming. It kind of calms someone. It calmed him. Many people with autism do things like that. That's why you might see repeated flapping of the hands, that type of thing. Well, he was spinning around every recess, all by himself. He was teased so badly by a group of boys that the principal was forced to move the child with autism to a different school.
Wow.
We were called to that school, and we were able to group that group of boys who did the bullying in one group as they moved around. And so when I had them, just the 4 of them, I said, why do you think someone would tease someone with a disability? And you know how usually bullies have a kind of a ringleader?
Yeah.
The ringleader's hand just shot up, and he said, we tease him because we're afraid. And when we tease him, we feel bigger and stronger.
Really?
And he looks weaker, but we're still afraid. They didn't have the information to understand why was he behaving differently than everyone else. when we gave that to him and they understood, you know, he's got all sorts of things coming in at him, you know, sensory overload. He's just trying to calm himself down. They understood that, but it wasn't in time.
Darlene, when you're that child, the one that is exhibiting that behavior, for just the reason of that's part of your existence in order for you to feel right, what does that isolation feel like to that child?
Sometimes it's terror.
Terror.
There are a lot of children with disabilities who don't want to go to school, and they beg their parents not to make them go to school.
Really?
Yes. What Leslie said is, it's so significant because we as human beings, we do tend to avoid that which we don't understand. I'm completely blind. I lost my sight 15 years ago, and so I have the experience of living life as a sighted person. I went 6 years trying to save my sight, so I was visually impaired. I was in that in-between world, and now I see nothing at all. And I noticed a difference as an adult as how I was interacted with by people in my family.
Can you describe it?
Yes. If we don't understand blindness, if somebody's standing there with a guide dog or a white cane, a person might, you know, like if you cannot make eye contact, you might see me in a grocery store, make eye contact, we're standing in line, and you might smile or, you know, or wave. But if I don't make eye contact with you because I can't see you, it automatically kind of puts us at a disadvantage in our interaction.
Sure.
So people don't understand, how do I approach this person? Do I approach this person? Do you shake the hand of somebody who's blind? Do you walk up to a kid who's walking around the playground with a white cane? You know, are they going to understand when I talk to them? There are just so many unknowns.
Well,
so
it's
you
very true.
tend to avoid what you don't understand.
It's very true because, Darlene, the question is that assume that you have no malicious intent, but someone doesn't know how to even interact with you because they're afraid that they might upset you or offend you.
Or, yes. And I think for a touch of understanding, when we go into the schools, it's a two-part program. We actually bring in people with disabilities to be the speakers. So I started with the organization in 2000, and so I would share my experiences in my life with the kids about blindness to give them a better understanding, and they can ask me anything. There is no question off the table. So we may have somebody with Parkinson's, somebody with cerebral palsy, somebody who has deafness, and we share our lives with them, so that wall that comes up between people with and without disabilities, it's gone. Because I may come into the classroom as they look at me like, oh, that lady, she's blind, she can't see. But by the time we finish talking, I'm Darlene, and oh yeah, Darlene can't see, but that's a secondary characteristic now, as opposed to the thing that separated us.
That's amazing.
Yes.
Leslie, how did you come upon this mission of yours to do this?
Well, it's kind of like a jigsaw puzzle of pieces that came together. I had the good fortune of having a very loving aunt who had developmental disabilities. And I remember mistreating her when I was younger because I didn't understand her challenges.
You mistreated her?
I did, inadvertently. I was confused because in my eyes she looked like the adults, but she behaved more like the children, and I was confused. And when I was about 5 years old, my mother told me a bit about her challenges and told me that she deserved the same respect that I was giving everyone else. And I was uncomfortable. So when she told me the challenges and I began to understand, my aunt and I became incredibly close and remained so for the rest of her life. So that was a foundation for me to when I went to school and there were other children with disabilities, it didn't frighten me. So I became friends with a number of my classmates with disabilities, and that was pretty comfortable in elementary school, but when we hit junior high school, middle school, they were teased and tormented terribly.
What happens then?
You know, I think the hormones kick in, and kids are feeling uncertain about themselves, particularly at that time, and so they're looking to do exactly what I told you those boys did. If I put someone else down, I look stronger, I look more competent,
It's insecurity.
I look more confident.
It comes down to insecurity,
exactly.
doesn't it? Yeah.
And that's that age group that really struggles with that because they're finding their own identity at that time. So when my own sons, who are now 34 and 37, were in elementary school, I saw that they were really mainstreaming kids with disabilities into the classroom, which I thought was fantastic. But I assumed that there would be...
Is it fantastic?
It depends. It can be. It certainly can be. But I feel that the children who are in the regular education classes deserve to understand the challenges, and certainly the child coming in with the challenges deserves to have as much understanding as he or she when they enter the classroom. And so I was told and observed many, many incidences of teasing, and it wasn't malicious. It was simply ignorance. And children deserve to be able to be ignorant. They're just learning everything.
There was a lack of understanding.
Yes.
Why the child was using a chair, why the child was behaving the way he or she was behaving.
And particularly in visible disabilities. I remember working with a second grade class. We were talking about telling time. And I had about 4 kids sitting in front of me. And I asked this one and that one, and everything went fine until I got to the last one. And when I began to ask that boy questions, the rest of the children chimed in unison. Don't ask him, he's stupid.
What is an invisible disability?
Anything that someone can struggle with that you can't see. So what we deal with most in the classrooms now are learning disabilities and autism. And so a child can look as though they have no additional challenges compared to the rest of the kids, and then all of a sudden have like what they call a meltdown. Because there's something going on within their head. Maybe the lights are too bright, maybe the air conditioner sound is bothering them. It could be anything, and they can't handle that in addition to everything else that's going on.
It could be how their clothing feels on their body that day.
Absolutely.
Really?
It could feel like sandpaper. It's like if you ever had a sunburn and then you had to put your shirt on and it's just very uncomfortable. You can't wait to get your shirt off. That is, a sensory issue with a lot of kids with autism. And kids who are on the autism spectrum often have that that characteristic where they put their clothes on and it bothers them. So they're just like in their clothes and they're uncomfortable. Or picking up a pencil could be like holding something so rough and so pointed in their hands that they just can't hold it.
Right.
But if another child sitting next to you doesn't understand why the child is doing that, but once they come to understand it, it's not unusual anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
So take us, Darlene, through the training that when you come into a school, what happens?
Well, we have a 2-part program. We have the speakers portion, as I mentioned a moment ago, where the speakers go into a classroom or a library, and we have half the kids in with us. And so typically how it works is we do 1 grade level. It's not an assembly like a lot of programs are in the school where you go in it and you're in the auditorium or the multi-purpose room and all the kids in the school are there. It's not like that at all. It's much more intimate. We'll go in and do the 4th grade in the school. And so we'll take the 4th graders, say there are 100 between all the classes, and we divide them in half, 50 and 50. As an example, 50 of the kids are with the speakers, 50 of the kids are with Leslie and the other volunteers with A Touch of Understanding in the multi-purpose room, and those kids are divided up into smaller groups. And as the speakers are sharing our lives and our experiences about our disabilities with the kids, and they're able to ask us questions, the other group at the same time is going through the stations. One station is it has white canes. It's the vision station. So the kids actually learn what is Braille. They get to write their name in Braille and actually understand why would a child in 4th grade use Braille. And they understand that if they close their eyes and the teacher asks them to open up their history book, it's just a flat, smooth page. It means nothing to a child who can't see. But if they can learn an alphabet where the dots are raised off the page and that becomes an A and a B, the kids go, oh, and it makes total sense.
And by the end of this is a day that you spend with
we
the kids?
spend typically 3 hours. It's
3
about
hours?
an hour and a half, and then we do this. After the hour and a half is up, then we switch.
Okay.
Yes.
And at the end of these 3 hours, what do these kids come out with?
They come out with what I think is the essence of bullying is to pick on or to isolate or to go after somebody you don't understand what they're doing or why they're doing it. We take that out of the equation. So we help the children to understand what is blindness and why would somebody behave like that with blindness.
Right. Leslie, it's interesting because according to the statistics, that typically when a bullying situation happens in a school, the intervention that happens the most often is another child stepping up to end that particular incident. And so it sounds like that what you're doing is maybe tool sharing or tool creating?
We're empowering the kids to know how to, it's not like we're just removing the bullying. We're giving them the tools to befriend, to understand, to stand up for. And so it's not uncommon for kids after going through our program to say to, perhaps a new child who's come into the school who hasn't gone through our program, we don't do that here. And it's much more powerful when the kids say we don't do that here, because when it's the adults saying we don't do that here, the adults aren't always there. The adults aren't always in the restrooms. The adults aren't in the far sides of the playgrounds. The adults aren't on the school buses or at the bus stops.
Tell us what that training has meant to the children who are disabled that are in these classrooms.
I can give an example about the little third grader.
Please.
We came to a school on a Friday, and this was I believe it's the second grade class actually, and there was a little girl who had braces on her legs, and she had cerebral palsy, and she could not support her own weight, and she used a walker. When we came to the school, this little girl was doing fine in the classroom, but socially she didn't really have the friends. She didn't have the sleepovers. A lot of kids with disabilities are not invited to the after-school activities with the other kids. They're just left out.
Well, that's tough.
Many kids can reach high school and never had a sleepover before because they were never invited. Or a birthday party. They're not invited to the birthday parties. Never.
Not their own and not
I think that a lot of people just don't think about that.
Exactly. They don't think about it. And the kids that's not cruelty. That's just a lack of understanding and awareness that child, yes, she's doing it differently, but she's just the same. She would love to come to a sleepover with the rest of the girls. So when we came to the school, the tetherball at that school was a big deal. So you actually had your beginner, your intermediate, and your advanced tetherball circles. Well, this little girl had never played tetherball because of her disability and how serious the kids took it. She never stood in line for that. When we came to the school and we were the kids went around the stations, she actually spoke up and shared with the kids her disability. She lifted up her pant leg and showed them the scars on her legs from her surgeries and spoke like a doctor about the procedures she had had.
Really?
And the kids were asking her all these questions, and it was just a safe, wonderful forum that she got to interact, and the kids were awed by her experiences. Well, the following Monday, we got a report from one of the teachers who was on yard duty that day that she saw a miracle happen, that the following Monday, the kids came back to school, and lo and behold, at recess, there was this little second grade girl who had never played tetherball before. She was in line for tetherball, and she worked her way up through the line with her walker, and when it got to her turn, Scott, she pushed her walker aside, and she had to get down on her knees because she couldn't support her own weight. And because her teammate, her opponent, had gone through a touch of understanding the previous Friday, he got down on his knees.
Really?
And that's how he played the game with her.
Oh.
And nobody in line went, hey, that's not tetherball rules. Everybody just, because they understood her better and her situation, they just accepted it. And so she played, and every time she played thereafter, when she had an opponent, they got down on their knees, and nobody thought anything of it.
That is so
It
cool.
changed everything. Yeah.
Wow.
It changed everything.
When you do this work and you're able to empower these kids, Leslie, what about the parents? Because I would think that as much as the children need those tools, I have to believe that many parents need those tools as well because they don't understand.
Well, I think of the parents almost in two groups. I think of the parents of the children with disabilities and how desperately they want their child to be accepted.
Sure.
And then I think of the parents of the typically developing children who naturally might respond to a situation by saying, just don't even react, just stay away. Particularly, again, I have to go back to autism. If there's a child with autism and their behavior is unpredictable, sometimes frightening, but no one really knows that that's the reason for the behavior. You know, if my child comes home from school and says, well, so-and-so was in line and they just started hitting me and I don't even know why, it's a natural reaction for me to say, you know, just stay away from them. But then we have children being isolated because the parents don't know why that behavior is. So the more we can educate the parents of typically developing children and support the parents of children with disabilities, the stronger our community will be. And that's one reason that we developed the Youth Force. And the Force stands for Friends Offering Respect, Creating Empowerment. And it's an inclusive group of children and young people with and without disabilities. They get together every month for social, leadership, and community service opportunities. And for many of the children, their parents have told us this is the only place they have friends.
Really?
This is the only place they're accepted, that they can get together with this group and not wonder if someone will hurt their child, tease their child, that it's a totally safe environment. And from that, then, we now have a mom's chat group because they get together outside the Youth Force. As a matter of fact, one 11-year-old boy had his first birthday party that included friends.
Really?
Because it was the first time the mom felt comfortable asking kids over. And she said not only did the boys have a great time, but the mothers were able to sit together and visit totally relaxed, that if their child had a meltdown or got an anger, issue or anything like that, they didn't have to explain it. The other mothers knew.
Now, how many schools and children are you touching per year? Are you both touching per year right now?
For the school workshops, last year 6,196 students went through from August to last May.
And
These numbers are very exciting.
those are very large numbers. And is that all within this region, Darlene?
It is, for the most part, within the greater Sacramento region. We've gone as far as South Lake Tahoe. We've gone to Mill Valley. The word is out there for a touch of understanding. And if you can think back when you were a kid, and even if the child didn't have a disability, there were kids in your class, no matter what grade you were in, that got picked on. It's a devastating thing to have your child come home in tears, begging not to go back to school because of the environment at school. So parents find out about what we can do and how we change the total atmosphere on the school campus, let alone in a classroom, and they're calling us saying, please come here, come there. We've now done over 61,000 children.
61,000?
Children have been affected by a touch of understanding. And many of these kids went through in second and third and fourth grade, and now they're through college. And we've had these young adults call us and say, I did a touch of understanding when I was in third grade, you changed my life. I'm in special education now. Or
as an instructor?
Absolutely. Yes. That it just steered the course of their life because it opened something up in their soul. They're like, oh, I get this. And it changes everything.
Some have said that it's not something that they did, it's something they carry with them.
Yes.
Really?
Yes. They look at everybody differently after that. And I think that is what's so unique about what we do at A Touch of Understanding. It's not going in and saying to the kids, bullying is wrong, don't pick on anybody, it's not the right thing for you to do. We actually get to the heart of why there's bullying in the first place. And it's because we look at someone who's different from us, we don't understand what they're doing or why they're doing it, so we isolate them or we call them names or worse. Worse things happen. We've had, a little boy who had his walker taken from him off the playground,
Really?
taken by some other boys, and he was left on his knees, on the playground until his sister had to go get it back from them. We've had a boy who's a high school student. We came in and he actually went through the program when he was a youngster, and now he's in high school, and he called and asked A Touch of Understanding to come speak to his school, and so he got up in front of those sophomores. Can you imagine being a sophomore and getting up and telling your story in front of your peers?
Wow.
That takes
That's
a lot
bravery.
of guts.
Bravery.
He actually broke down in front of them and started to tear up, and he told them that he was going to kill himself. And A Touch of Understanding came in and changed everything at his school, because once we came through, after we left, he was not invisible anymore, or he was not bullied anymore. He wasn't hit on the head anymore, because kids used to walk by and smack him on the head and things like that. And it stopped because kids go, oh, wow, so that's what's going on with you. And then friendships started. So it was a unique experience, and it happens after time and time again. And finally, one of the girls in the audience says, "Who was it? We'll stop them for you." I mean, they wanted to, like you said, that the children who stand up for other children, that's when it stops. That is what we do in the schools. We empower those other kids to go, wait a minute, this isn't right.
And we're going to have to leave it there. What an amazing story. Best of luck to you both.
All right, thanks,
Thank you very
Scott.
much.
Well, that's our show. Thanks to our guests, and thanks to you for watching Studio Sacramento. I'm Scott Syfax. See you next time right here on KVIE.
At Five Star Bank, community is at the heart of what we do. Every day we strive to have thoughtful solutions for our customers and help our communities prosper. Honest dialogue about the issues affecting the region is vitally important to that prosperity. We are proud to be part of the conversation and hope you'll join in.
All episodes of Studio Sacramento, along with other KVIE programs, are available to watch online at kvie.org/video.